You know, a thought occurred to me as I was sitting here listening to that. I really wish you guys would have more fun on it. I mean, thank you all. You know, our Sunday school classes, frequently we like to use a Bible story in our Sunday school classes. We'll find a Bible story that relates to the theme and the message that we want the children to learn on that Sunday morning. And then we ask them questions about the Bible story. We ask them, you know, what happened in it. We want to be sure that they just understand the basic elements of the story, who was in it, what they did. But then we start asking them, where do you see this sort of thing happening in the world around you? And how do you see this sort of thing happening to you? So we kind of lead them through a little metaphysical interpretation of the Bible story. And it was just a few weeks ago, one of the children was getting picked up, and their mom asked them, it was one of the 9-year-olds, and their mom asked them, well, what did you learn in Sunday school today? And so he started telling his mom, said, well, Mom, our teacher told us about how God sent Moses behind enemy lines on a mission to rescue the Israelites. And when he got to the Red Sea, his engineers built a pontoon bridge so that they could get the Israelites across. And then as soon as he was on the other side, Moses used his walkie-talkie to radio back to headquarters, and then they sent their bombers to destroy the bridge so the Egyptians couldn't follow behind them. And I could tell Mom was kind of like, really? Is this really what you talked about? And she said, no, there's no way. He goes, is that really what your teacher taught you? And the little boy just looked there and goes, well, no, but Mom, if I told it the way the teacher did, you'd never believe what happened. And so we've come to realize that we can look at these Bible stories and we can take the people in them, we can take the characters in them, we can take the situations in them, and then we can put ourselves in that story. And we can see what it was that was happening and find when that happened in our lives. And if you're not familiar with the story of the Exodus, this is the story of Moses leading the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. And as he's leading them out of Egypt, they're following a pillar of a cloud through the day that turns into a pillar of fire in the evening. And as he's leading them out of Egypt, he gets them all the way up to the sea. And then the Israelites start complaining. Oh, Moses, you took us out of Egypt all the way through this wilderness to have us die here? Come on, we were happier back in Egypt. And so then Moses communicates with God and they part the Red Seas. And the Israelites walk across. And then as the Egyptians are making their way across the sea, the parted sea ceases to be parted and the Israelites are saved. And so they're pleased. They've got a little bit of respect now for Moses because he saved their lives, but it didn't last too long. And they started complaining, oh, we're hungry. I don't have enough food. You brought us out here to starve in the wilderness. And so God provides them with a substance called manna, and they're fed through this manna. But remember, we can look at the story metaphysically, and we can look at the story and find our place in the story and find where we fit into this story. And when we look at the story of the Israelites traveling through the wilderness, what we find is that these are a people who are in the midst of transition. They're transitioning out of their old way of life, out of the time when they were held in slavery, into a new way of life in their promised land. And that's symbolic of the transitions that each and every one of us go through in our own lives. Just like the Israelites that were being chased by the Egyptians, oftentimes we'll sit there and look at what's going on in the middle of a transition and remember back fondly to the way it was. And almost wish we could be back then because even though it may not have been the greatest, it was still more comfortable than being out here in the middle of the wilderness, not knowing what's coming next. And sometimes when we're in the middle of a transition, we sit and we start wondering, where is our spiritual food? We become hungry for getting more of that spiritual food in our lives. But there's still that message in there that the presence of God is going to provide throughout the transition. And so certainly in the story, we see that the Israelites were in a state of transition. And we know that when we're in a transition, all the changes that come at us, they confront us on personal and societal levels. And these changes are things that happen when we finally look at the status quo that's around us. And there wells up within us a great desire to be free from the limitations of that status quo. And once that desire takes hold in us, it's then that we begin our journey towards the promised land, towards the manifestation of our goals and our dreams. Now let's be honest. We're in a time of transition right now here at Unity Church of Overland Park. In many ways, we're like the Israelites that were wandering in the desert. We know what our promised land is. We know how wonderful this community can be. We know what's coming for us down the line, but we're not there yet. We're still in that time of transition, that time of wandering. Now, we know from more than just the story of the Exodus that when a group of people has a goal, when a group of people has a mission that they're willing to commit to and follow, that they can't help but be successful. And the Israelites were led through their experience by Moses. Now, Moses metaphysically represents drawing out. It draws out the wisdom from within something. And so what do we have in this community that can help draw out the wisdom from within us? What do we have in this community that can help guide us and direct us as we move towards our promised land? Well, I'd like you to all take a look in your bulletins. If you open up the first page of the bulletin, you'll see on this little inside page here, there's an article about the Crystal Singing Bowl concert that's going to be on the 27th and our YFM summer camps. But then there's this blue box right here next to all of that. And I'd like to point out the section that says Our Mission. And what it says is that under our mission is we are here to awaken and express the Christ nature in ourselves, our families, our community, and the world. We are here to awaken and express the Christ nature in ourselves, our families, our community, and our world. I would like to suggest that this is the very statement that can drive us into the promised land. And so let's break down what it means. The first term I want to take a look at in that is the Christ nature. It says we're here to awaken and express our Christ nature. And the term Christ nature has become just this wonderful unity, almost cliche, where we say we're here to express the Christ or be the Christ in that moment, but we don't really oftentimes get into what it really means to be the Christ. And so what does it mean to be the Christ? Well, the Christ nature is something that abides in every person, place, and situation as its potential perfection. It's the presence of God within each and every one of us. It's the perfect word or idea of God which is unfolding into each one of us. Now, we can let go right now of the idea that Christ was Jesus' last name. As we heard in the meditation, Christ actually comes from a Greek word, Christos, which means the anointed one. And so in that sense, it's a title. It's a title that gets conferred upon someone once they realize their oneness with God. So as we realize our oneness with God, each and every one of us can become Christ, the anointed, Christos. So how do we do that? How do we get there? Well, and before we do that, let's take a look at the word awaken. Because it's interesting that they chose to put the word awaken into our mission statement. And the reason for that is because we know the truth is each and every one of you is already the Christ nature. That's already inside of you. So your work isn't necessarily to realize it or find it or attain it, but it's to wake it up within inside of you. It's to make it so that you are presenting yourself from your Christ nature in as many moments as you possibly can. And so where do we begin to awaken this Christ within us? Well, it begins within ourselves. We want to express the Christ in ourselves, and we do that through meditation. It's through spending time in meditation and in silence and remembering and realizing the truth that we are, that we begin to awaken and express our perfect potential of God. The Fillmores and many other great unity luminaries, such as Emily Cady and Eric Butterworth, and spiritual masters from all over the world, have taught that our thoughts have great creative power. We know our thoughts can create the reality that we experience. And so as we sit in that meditative time and we begin to focus on the truth that we are the power and presence of God, that thought begins to become our reality. Now, I want you to be very clear in understanding me that this is not a magic wand. It's not something that's so easy that you just think, well, I am the power and presence of God and I am the Christ and that's it, you're done. It takes work. It takes practice. It takes time and meditation. It takes building that up within you over a period of time. And if you haven't started meditating before, if meditation would be a new practice for you, I'd like to invite you to join one of our guided meditation classes. They happen the first and third Tuesdays of every month, right down the hall in the Peace Chapel at 7 o'clock. If you've been meditating for 40 years, I would like to invite you to attend one of our guided meditations. They happen on the first and third Tuesdays of the month. Meditation isn't just something that you can just do for a little while and then you're okay. You don't need it anymore. It's a lifelong practice. We're told in the scriptures that Jesus wandered in the wilderness for 40 days during his time of spiritual contemplation. We're told the Israelites that we heard about in the story earlier wandered for 40 years. We're told Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree for 7 weeks before he attained enlightenment. The importance of those numbers isn't so much how long they are, but it's to let you know that this is a process that takes a long time. See, there's a message in all those big numbers. And that message is that it's a process. That message is that it takes as long as it takes. Each one of these measures of time was just a way for the author to say, hey, look, this took a long time before they realized they were enlightened. Stick with it. Don't let go of your meditation practice. Don't stop meditating on the truth of what you are. Don't let yourself get discouraged if it doesn't happen as quickly as you would like it to. Now, the next step of our mission statement here at Unity Church of Overland Park is that we express that Christ nature in our families. And we do this through building a spiritual practice with our family, creating a family meditation time, finding time to pray together. Now, I understand that some of you out there may not be in a family or have a family available to you where it would be safe for you to express your spirituality in an open way. And please don't feel the need to put yourself at any sort of emotional risk in order to do this. But do know that just the very act of you showing up as your Christ presence cannot help but make an impact on those around you. Just yourself being the Christ can make a wonderful impact. Now, I wish I could just tell you that, oh, this is the spiritual practice for you to follow, and if you go follow the spiritual practice, everything will be fine. But the truth of the matter is spiritual practices are very diverse. It's up to you to find one that connects with you. But what I will tell you to do is to find a family group, a small group that you can connect with, and you can begin building that spiritual practice with. That small group can be your parents, it can be your children, it can be people who you've developed a close personal friendship with. The important aspect is that you begin to build that spiritual practice with your family. You see, your family is however you choose to define it to be. But please, no matter what your family is, do not underestimate the importance of having a spiritual practice with them. Sarah and I, and she's upstairs teaching kindergartners right now, but we began developing a spiritual practice a few years ago, where what we do is we find 30 minutes of our day to sit in silent meditation every day. Usually, if possible, we like to wait until the business of our day is done, and what we found is that 30 minutes of silent meditation helps to ground us and helps to recenter and focus us. And I found out if we miss that time, the next day just doesn't quite go as well as it probably could have. So it doesn't matter what that spiritual practice is, find it and put it into practice with your family. Your practice can change. You can keep moving around until you find a practice that works for you. But be consistent about that spiritual time with your family. Now, the next step in our mission statement is to express that Christ nature here in our community. And I want you all to hear me very clearly when I say this is not Unity Church of any one minister or any one person or any one group. This is Unity Church of Overland Park. This is your community. Your board, the staff, every one of us is here to help you manifest this mission. We are all here to help in bringing the Christ into expression in this community. But this is not something that's just exclusive for just a few of us here. This is the mission for each and every one of us. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of how you can be the Christ light for this community. I want you to think of a way that you can help awaken the potential perfection that exists within the walls of this community. Ask yourself, am I doing all that I can in this moment to be the expression of the Christ for Unity Church of Overland Park? And let's be honest, this is something that I expect each and every one of you to be able to do. We all have the ability within us to hold this community in prayer. And we know from the rich prayer history of Unity that our prayers are powerful. And just the very act of holding in your prayer time the potential perfection that exists within these walls can't help but make a positive impact on our ability to complete our mission here at Unity Church of Overland Park. So just being willing to hold us in prayer helps us to express the community, or the Christ in this community. So if you are led to do nothing else, at least hold the community in prayer. But let your inner wisdom be your guide. If you're guided to give more, then give more. If you're guided to step into a new volunteer role, then step into a new volunteer role. If you're guided to sign up to give blood after the service, sign up and give blood. If you're guided to deepen your spiritual awareness, then take one of our classes. But the time is now, and this is our community. It belongs and it exists because of each and every one of you. And it is up to us to become the expression of the Christ in the areas that we are led to support this community. Just as the Israelites were led out of the desert through following their divine wisdom and holding their desire to reach to the promised land, I know that we too can lead ourselves through this time of transition in our history by realizing that we have the potential to show up as the perfection of God in every moment if we're willing to say yes to it. And as we begin to express that Christ nature in ourselves and in our community, we know that we begin to reach out and make a difference into our world. We know that our actions will affect our world around us. We know that one random act of kindness radiates out from us like the ripples in a pond after a stone's been thrown in. It doesn't take a lot of time of watching the news to realize that there are significant problems in the world around us. And we've reached a point in our human journey where it's time to stop looking at the problems that plague us as problems that are insurmountable. It's time for us to begin seeing the presence of the perfect potential that lies within each of those problems and using that potential to find a solution to the problems that face us. The time to regard ourselves as the cause of the problem is gone. It's time to regard ourselves now as evolutionary heroes who are facing a supreme test of our collective spirit, our capacities, and our intelligence. We are moving through an unprecedented collective rite of passage and confronting the supreme challenge of building new relationships with each other, with this community, and with the living universe that is our home is the only way to overcome those problems. And so as we begin to awaken and express and become aware of the Christ nature within ourselves, we infuse that Christ nature into everything that we do. It becomes a part of our family life. It becomes a part of our community. It becomes a part of our world. But it has to begin with that one personalized step. You see, individually, each one of us has to make that commitment to be the expression of the Christ in our world. And so I hope that's a commitment that you're willing to make with me. I hope that that's something that we can, as a community, commit to being the power and presence of the Christ for this world. Because after all, this is our community, and we're all in this together. God bless you.